I'm Liz Faublis, and this is Currents. Tough times for the Philadelphia Archdiocese. We'll get the latest from someone who's there. Plus, a big turnout at the first Mass for one of Brooklyn's newest priests.
Bestowed yesterday morning upon Sean Sukil, to whom we now have the privilege and honor of calling Father Sean Sukil.
And an honor in Carroll Gardens for a saint who once ministered there.
So she lived here, she walked these streets, she ministered to the people, and most importantly, to the Italian immigrants.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. On Friday, Monsignor William Lynn, formerly the Secretary of Clergy for the Philadelphia Archdiocese, was found guilty of 1 count of child endangerment, the first time a U.S. church leader has been convicted of such a charge. The highest-ranking cleric accused of putting children in danger by helping cover up sexual abuse, Lynn was found not guilty on a 2nd count of endangerment and on a charge of conspiring to protect a priest accused of abuse. Now, the trial marked the first time U.S. prosecutors have charged not just the priests who allegedly committed abuses, but also church leaders for failing to stop them. Meanwhile, the Philadelphia Archdiocese faces an unprecedented wave of closures and mergers, not to mention a staggering $12.3 million operating loss for the last fiscal year. Now, the task of repairing the fractured archdiocese has been a daunting one for Philadelphia's relatively new Archbishop Charles Chaput. Earlier, I spoke with Rocco Palmo, a Currents contributor and author of the widely read blog Whispers in the Loggia, about all the suffering that has plagued Catholics throughout the Philadelphia Archdiocese. We talked in detail and quite personally about the future of his beloved archdiocese, his confidence in Archbishop Chaput, and how the faithful in Philadelphia, as well as the victims of abuse, are just trying to heal. Rocco, I want to begin by reading an excerpt from the Philly Inquirer online, which I'm sure you've seen. It reads, as the jury foreman read the verdict, Monsignor William J. Lynn turned very red, his family in the 2 rows behind him crying. Father James Brennan dropped his head to the table, overcome with emotion, faced with a likely retrial. Now, that emotion, I could only imagine, not just in the courtroom. What is the mood like in Philadelphia right now?
Liz, there's a sense that people have split minds on the verdict. You know, a lot of priests are very upset because they feel as if a priest was thrown under the bus, while the bishops who supervised him, some of whom remain alive, have not been called to account for their roles in this. Among survivors, both locally and nationally, this is a victory. It's justice being served, especially because of the historic circumstances that for the first time in the English-speaking world you have a church official who was criminally held to account as opposed to an abuser. And really this case became symbolic. It wasn't just about Bill Lynn. It was about the system, if you will, for the first time in the church being put on criminal trial in the U.S.
And Rocco, what has been the most difficult part? Has it been the discovery? Has it been the trial? Has it been just the thought of the betrayal?
At least in terms of the context of Philadelphia, you can't look at the trial in a vacuum. You know, we've been through the most difficult period these last 16 months that arguably any American diocese has been through in the last 50 years. It began with the grand jury and Lynn's indictment, and so that's why, in a way, the resolution of this trial is really a turning of the corner, a defining moment for the road ahead for the Archdiocese. But it's come in a stunning context of the beginning of the closings of parishes, the closing of 27 schools, which just took place 2 weeks ago, the largest closing of schools any American diocese has ever undertaken, a massive amount of cuts at the Archdiocese. The Chancery, 20% of the staff are going to be losing their jobs next week, and highlighted by the closing of the Archdiocesan newspaper, the Catholic Standard Times, which is 150 years old. More has changed in this diocese in the last 16 months than it has in the 20 years before it, but at least it gives a kind of carves out a new foundation for the church here, which we really needed for a long time, and it brings us on a better path to what's hopefully a brighter road ahead.
And Rocco, you did mention that ahead of this interview, that it has been a lot of suffering that has brought you here, but there is now some light at the end of the tunnel. Having said that, where is Monsignor Lynn now?
As we speak, Monsignor Lynn is in a courtroom. There are more hearings because as soon as the conviction was announced, he was brought into custody and has been at the city prison for the last week. As of right now, the judge has not yet ruled or on the motion for house arrest, so at least for the next week ahead, Lynn's going to remain in jail. The other thing, too, once the sentencing is set for August 13th, under the statutes, the charge brings 3.5 to 7 years in prison, and but only after a sentencing can an appeal proceed. And judging by what Lynn's lawyers have been saying the last couple of days, it looks like we're going to have an appeal. So, you know, in terms of this case and in terms of other criminal trials to come out from the grand jury and civil suits against the Archdiocese, you know, we may be turning a corner here, but we're not exactly out of the woods just yet.
And having said that, the Archdiocese actually did put out a statement saying that it has embarked on a journey of reform and renewal, and it's going to require honesty and hope. It also offered an apology to victims of clergy sexual abuse. Honesty and hope. Is that possible, Rocco, at this time? And what will it take to get there?
I think it's possible for several reasons. First off, you know, the grand jury, both grand juries, remember 2011 was the second one, really kind of laid bare a lot of what was under the surface of the leadership of the Archdiocese in prior times. But also the fact that we're undergoing a staggering cultural change by the fact that, you know, for years, the archbishops, for decades, the archbishops of Philadelphia had all been, you know, very Roman, very triumphalist figures, and that was the culture of the church here, and that's what Philadelphia Catholics knew. But now you have an archbishop, Archbishop Charles Chaput, who's come in from the West, who's known as a thoroughly no-nonsense administrator, but also a very gentle pastor, but someone who's used to being straight up with people. And you know, regardless of the result of this trial, the most significant outcome of the grand jury had already been decided, and that the culture of Catholic Philadelphia going forward from here was going to be very different than it had been before because of the archbishop who was sent here.
Rocco, you're a native of Philadelphia. You attended the University of Pennsylvania. You've been named an at-large member of the Pastoral Council of the Archdiocese of Philadelphia by Archbishop Charles Chaput. And it's important that I say this so that our audience knows it's more than just a blog that you write, a very well-respected blog, but it has deeper meaning. For those who are so much like you in Philadelphia, where do you go from here? How does your healing begin?
Again, honesty is paramount. Justice for the victims is paramount, but not just justice, but compassion. And to say that, you know, what they've endured, and the most moving thing about these 16 months, it's been the most intense experience of my life, and I know for the lives of many of us here in this city, in this local church. But, you know, for too long, victim survivors of sexual abuse had to carry their suffering silently and with their families, and our first hope and the first order of business really going forward and always is that the church completely focus itself on giving them back a little bit of the life they didn't have before. But in the meantime, it's been as painful as it's been a grace for me and for all of us to feel in a small way, in ways that can never equal the suffering they've endured, to be able to share in their suffering, so that together we can come, hope, God willing, but only through the work we give and the faith we bring to the table, a sense of resurrection, a sense of new life, and to really rebuild the church here, because too many people here in this diocese have suffered too long, and they deserve a far better church than the one they had.
And there's more currents ahead. Leaders of all faiths stand opposed to the federal contraception mandate. We'll have that and the rest of the day's headlines next. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. A group of Christian, Jewish, and Muslim leaders have signed a letter opposing the Health and Human Services contraception mandate. U.S. Bishops' Conference President Cardinal Timothy Dolan and Baltimore Archbishop William Lori are among Catholic signers of the letter titled Free Exercise of Religion, Putting Beliefs into Practice. The letter states that, quote, no government should tell religious organizations either what to believe or how to put their beliefs into practice. Reverend Matthew Harrison, president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod issued the letter. It comes as the Fortnight for Freedom continues across the U.S. Catholic bishops called for the 2-week period of prayer and action to speak out on behalf of religious freedom amid a host of perceived threats. Stay with Currents for complete coverage of the Fortnight for Freedom. Well, the Supreme Court's decision to strike down several provisions of an Arizona immigration law while allowing another controversial element to stand, drawing mixed reactions from the bishop's leader on migration issues. Archbishop Jose Gomez of Los Angeles saying a ruling that Arizona cannot require immigrants to carry registration papers, allow for warrantless arrests based solely on the suspicion someone is an illegal immigrant, or make it a crime for undocumented immigrants to apply for or hold a job, quote, reaffirms the strong role of the federal government in regulating immigration. Now, the provision that requires state police to check the immigration status of any detained person, provided there is a reasonable suspicion the person is in the country illegally, concerns the Archbishop because it could, quote, lead to the separation of families and undermine the Church's ability to minister to the immigrant population. Gomez added the Church will continue to stand by immigrants and their families and seek justice on their behalf. U.S. bishops across the nation will urge their state governments to not pursue laws such as in Arizona, but rather to pursue humane reform on the federal level. Now, over in Egypt, a sense of optimism. Coptic Catholics, Bishop Johannes Zakaria of Luxor was encouraged by the victory speech of newly elected Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi. Now, the bishop even expressed hope for the future despite concerns the party's apparent openness has an underlying Islamist agenda that will be intolerant of Christians. In his speech, the president-elect reassured we Egyptians, Muslims, and Christians are advocates of civilization and construction, and that this government will respect international covenants and treaties, end quote. Bishop Zakaria told aid to the church in need people are waiting to see if the president will honor his promises, considering the Muslim Brotherhood has not lived up to their commitments in the past. Now, Archbishop Michael Fitzgerald, the Apostolic Nuncio in Cairo, told the Missionary International Service news agency that the church hoped Morsi might be able to lead the country, quote, in the interest of all its children in order to safeguard the cohesion of the social fabric. And while some concerns in the region have eased following the election, questions and fear still linger. CNN's Dan Rivers explains.
It's easy to view the scenes in Tahrir Square as a country celebrating the defeat of an old regime. But now the party is over in Cairo, many people are wondering what the Muslim Brotherhood's victory means for them, especially some sections of society which feel threatened by their agenda. About 10% of Egyptians are Coptic Christians. They've suffered years of persecution under Mubarak's regime, and things haven't got better since his fall last year. These clashes in 2011 highlighted the tensions. Some in the Coptic community are worried they'll be marginalised still further. Perhaps why President Morsi promised equality for Copts in his inaugural speech. Najib Jibril is a Coptic leader who says the Coptic community is sceptical about the promises.
We feel afraid, and I can prove to that thousands of the Coptic people left Egypt from last March to abroad.
The exodus from Egypt isn't confined to Copts. The educated liberal elite is also worried amid concerns women will have their rights curtailed. Last year there were confrontations between feminists and religious conservatives who want to control how women dress and behave. Nirvan Mortegi is a businesswoman who fears the Muslim Brotherhood's victory will only increase pressure on women.
I do not want somebody to tell me that I should cover up. Many of our friends and many of our community have their plan Bs to exit Egypt, and they've already begun immigration processes to other countries.
Ahmed Rasim heads the Al Tahrir party, followed by many Shia Muslims. He's also fearful about the future.
Egypt and the area entered a dark tunnel and will not get out of it very easy. Getting out of this dark tunnel will be accompanied by bloodshed, huge, heavy economic losses.
the flickering hope that Egypt will somehow step back from the Muslim Brotherhood's Islamist agenda. But for some, that hope has already been extinguished.
In other news, on Wednesday, Pope Benedict visited the region of Italy hard hit by earthquakes last month in order to show his support for earthquake survivors. Benedict visited a church which had collapsed in one of the earthquakes, killing the pastor there. He then traveled by jeep to the central square of Roveriato doni Novi to address several bishops and archbishops from damaged areas who were in attendance. Benedict offered his sympathy to those affected and made it clear that they are not suffering in isolation. He said, quote, "You are not and will not be alone." The Italian news agency ANSA reports that the Pope's butler will remain in a cell inside the Vatican for the foreseeable future. Paolo Gabrielli was arrested last month after documents connected with the so-called Vatileaks scandal were discovered in his apartment. The Vatican spokesman says there is no date set for further questioning of Gabrielli. And as talks between the Vatican and a breakaway traditionalist group continue, the Pontifical Commission overseeing the process has a new second in command. Pope Benedict has appointed Archbishop Augustine Di Noia to the newly created position of Vice President of Ecclesia Dei. Archbishop Di Noia, a New York native, tells Catholic News Service that the Society of St. Pius X's disagreements with Second Vatican Council, quote, "don't have to be dividing or keep us from the same communion table." In 1988, the then leader of the Society of St. Pius X was excommunicated after he ordained bishops without the Vatican's approval. The ordained bishops were also excommunicated, but Pope Benedict lifted those excommunications in 2009. Stay tuned, there's more currents ahead. Coming up, a celebration, the first Mass for one of Brooklyn's newest priests.
Today, I am very proud to call him my brother priest.
Welcome back. This past weekend was a special one for the Diocese of Brooklyn. On Saturday at St. James Cathedral, Bishop DiMarcio ordained 6 men as priests for the church in Brooklyn and Queens. And the following day, the new priests each celebrated their first Masses. And it was quite a turnout at Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal Church in Ridgewood, Queens. An auxiliary bishop, our 2 bishops-elect, and a multitude of priests, nuns, and family were on hand for Father Sean Sukil's first Mass.
My dear brothers and sisters in Christ, we are united this afternoon with joyful hearts. A joyful heart in giving thanks to Almighty God for the gift of priesthood bestowed yesterday morning upon Sean Sukil, to whom we now have the privilege and honor of calling Father Sean Sukil.
Father Sean's first Mass is a very important event in his life. Since he was 8 years old, he wanted to be a priest. And that desire, that call from God has been tested throughout all these years.
It's a great day in his life, in the life of his family, and in the life of this parish of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal.
It is difficult to put into words the joy that my heart is experiencing right now. It is to God, who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, the Blessed Trinity, that I am most grateful in blessing my life with this awesome vocation to his priesthood. It is to his mother Mary, our mother, that I consecrate my priesthood.
Oh, I'm very proud of him. Who wouldn't be? I mean, look at him. He's so happy. He really is. And he's a blessing to the whole diocese. He really, truly is.
I think he did wonderful. I think he demonstrated a tremendous amount of preparation. The seminarians who assisted them were spectacular. The music was very well chosen.
Today I said for the first time the words of consecration, this is my body and this is my blood given up for you. Words that I've always wanted to say my entire life, and it brought so much meaning today.
He is full of enthusiasm. He has had a strong sense of a vocation to the priesthood from the time that I met him, and he has certainly endeared himself to the many people he has met along the way of formation.
It feels very good knowing that he followed his dreams and this is what he always wanted to do, and he finally accomplished this in his life, to be a priest.
Prayed for this day for a long time because he wished for this for a long time.
We're so proud and so excited that he's taking this step forward in his faith and his relationship with our Lord.
We bishops have a tendency to call seminarians our sons. Today, I am very proud to call him my brother priest.
And Father Sukil has been assigned to the parish of Blessed Trinity in Breezy Point. We wish him and all the newly ordained priests nothing but the best as they embark on their ministries in the Diocese of Brooklyn. Don't go anywhere. There's more currents ahead. When we return, St. Frances Cabrini is remembered in a unique way in a Brooklyn neighborhood where she once ministered.
Mother Cabrini is not only the patroness of immigrants, but she's also the patroness of the new evangelization. And so she sends that message as a woman, as an immigrant, that no matter who you are or what your stature is, you're able to do great things.
And finally tonight, New York City has been and continues to be home to many celebrities, from writers to actors to athletes. And believe it or not, saints once walked our streets. There was Elizabeth Ann Seton, the first American-born person to be canonized. She converted from the Episcopal Church in which she was raised and founded the Sisters of Charity. There was also St. John Neumann, who was ordained at what is now Old St. Patrick's Cathedral on Mulberry Street in Manhattan. He later went on to become Bishop of Philadelphia. And here in Brooklyn, another saint once ministered to the borough's immigrant Italian community. Although Mother Frances Cabrini was not born in the U.S., she was the first citizen of this country to be canonized. On Sunday in Carroll Gardens, she was remembered in a very unique way. A mural of Mother Cabrini was unveiled, the work of a talented group of artists who based their design on essays submitted by grade school students. Bishop DeMarcio, Carroll Gardens residents, and local elected officials were on hand for that very special occasion.
I have a confession to make. I've fallen in love with a woman, and her name is Frances Cabrini. Mother Cabrini is most famous because she's the first American citizen, a naturalized citizen, to become a saint.
Maria Francesca Cabrini. She was born in a little town called Sant'Angelo Lodigiano, right outside of Milan, Italy.
As a young girl, she wanted to be a missionary. She wanted to go to China. But when she went to the Pope told her, no, not to the east, but go to the west, because there were many calls then from the United States for missionaries to take care of the many Italian immigrants that were coming.
She landed here in Brooklyn. She first landed in Manhattan and then came over to Brooklyn and was welcomed by Bishop McDonald, the second bishop of Brooklyn, and she was given money by Bishop McDonald to start a school. So she lived here, she walked these streets, she ministered to the people, and most importantly, to the Italian immigrants.
Part of the melting pot process is to convince new immigrants coming in, like we Italians who came in here around the turn of the century, to stop being Italian American and become American.
Her life was one that was lived for God and others. She took care of the immigrants of her day who were greatly discriminated against. But today we need her intercession because we have immigrants today who also are not receiving the correct treatment they should have in our beloved country.
3, 2, 1.
She's really a great example for all of us. Italian immigrant who came to this country and, inspired by her Catholic faith and her immigrant Italian experience, worked hard to set up schools to create programs that served immigrants, that helped people learn English, connect to this country, and have rich lives of opportunity. I thought that's the story that we need to be telling now. And we need to remember that the immigrant experience is what makes New York City what it is. We want to welcome immigrants. We want to help them become a contributing part of this city and this country. And that's what I'm so pleased this mural is going to help do.
The essay contest for Mother Cabrini, that was probably over 200 or 300 essays. It was a giant bag. And we read through every single one of them and found some key elements, and we tried to represent those through images.
Immigrants, when they come to this country, they're very humble. They go to a huge country, they have to learn the language, the new ways of doing, and that's what Mother Cabrini did. It's try to educate everybody and try to take care of people that do not have anything.
Mother Cabrini is not only the patroness of immigrants, which the Diocese of Brooklyn and Queens is the Diocese of Immigrants, but she's also the patroness of the new evangelization. And so she sends that message as a woman, as an immigrant, that no matter who you are or what your stature is, you're able to do great things.
And as part of the essay contest for the mural project, 4 winners from grades 2 through 8 were each awarded $500 savings bonds. That is all for tonight. Coming up on Wednesday, the Fortnight for Freedom rolls on here in the Brooklyn Diocese and across the country. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faubles. We leave you tonight with more from Father Sean Sukiel's first Mass this past Sunday at Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal in Ridgewood. Thank you for watching and have a good night. I'm Liz Faubles. Tonight on Currents, Fortnight for Freedom activities continue in the Diocese of Brooklyn and across the country. We'll have a rundown of everything that's going on. That, the latest from the Vatican, and the rest of the day's headlines tonight on Currents.